All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling something that can make or break, well, pretty much anything. Rebuilding trust after a scandal.
Uh-huh.
You sent over some pieces from Rebuilding Trust, that book by Susan Mohan, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into that, get to the good stuff, and figure out what it all means, for everyone listening.
Sounds good. It's funny, we talk about trust all the time, but what is it really? In business, I mean.
Right.
When you get down to it, it's the currency of business. Literally. Without it, companies can't really do anything, can't grow, can't come up with new ideas.
So it's not just like a nice-to-have, feel-good thing.
Yeah.
There are real consequences if you don't have it.
Huge consequences. Put yourself in a customer's shoes for a sec. Would you buy something from a company you just don't trust? Or invest in them if their reputation is shady?
Probably not.
No way. It affects everything. Sales, obviously, but how loyal customers are, whether employees are happy, even getting the best people to work for you.
And scandals, those are the trust busters, right? One day you're smooth sailing, the next it's a total hurricane of bad press, angry customers.
Stock prices going down the drain.
Total chaos.
It's like, imagine a crack in your house's foundation, right? If you ignore it, the whole thing could crumble.
Makes sense.
But here's the twist. Scandals, bad as they are, they can bring opportunity. Mohan actually says they're like a crucible for positive change.
That's kind of deep. So it's not just about fixing the mess, but like coming out better on the other side.
You got it. It's about admitting mistakes, learning, and becoming stronger, more trustworthy. But where do you even begin? So much to do, it can feel overwhelming.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right.
And that's where Mohan's roadmap comes in, right?
Right.
She lays out these different stages like acknowledgement, crisis management, how you talk to people inside the company, even marketing and ethical leadership stuff.
Lots to cover. And the key is each stage has a purpose. Take acknowledgement, for example. It's not about a quick apology and hoping everyone forgets. It's showing you get what happened, the impact, and that you're taking ownership.
So like real remorse, wanting to fix things, not just sweeping it under the rug.
Exactly. It tells everyone, inside and outside, we know this is serious and we're committed to fixing it. Think about it. If someone wrongs you and just blows it off, are you trusting them again?
No way.
Nope. But genuine remorse, willingness to change, that opens the door to forgiving them, maybe rebuilding things.
Makes sense. So scandal hits, what's next? Mohan mentions immediate response protocols. What's that all about?
Imagine a fire alarm, right? You don't sit around debating, you move. Crisis management is that fast action. You need a plan before things go wrong, and that plan needs a diverse team. Legal folks, PR, HR, operations, anyone who can help.
So like a fire drill, but for a PR disaster.
Yeah.
No time to figure things out when it's actually happening.
You got it. Preparation is key. And part of that is having the right team assembled. People who think clearly under pressure, who get the legal and ethical stuff, who can talk to everyone involved, both inside and outside the company.
Makes sense. Mohan's big on transparency, being really open, but isn't there a risk there, especially early on? Like, could it make things worse?
That's a fair point. But think about it. When there's no information, people make stuff up. Rumors and speculation can be way more damaging than the truth. Being open and honest, even if it's bad news, you control the story.
So being proactive, getting ahead of it, instead of reacting after the fact.
Exactly. It shows you're not hiding anything. You're admitting the mistakes, taking responsibility, and laying out the steps you're taking.
Okay, that makes sense. But it can't just be about talking to the public, right? Employees are going to want answers too, reassurance that things are okay.
Think of it like this, your employees. They're the face of your company. They're the ones talking to customers every day, representing you to the world. If they're uncertain, demoralized, it affects everything they do.
So talking to people inside the company is as important as the public-facing stuff. Got to make sure your employees feel informed, supported, and like they can speak for the company confidently.
100%. Internal communication can't be an afterthought. It's got to be core to your plan. Imagine working somewhere and the news is where you're getting info about a scandal your company's in.
Yikes.
Talk about anxiety. It totally erode trust in the leaders and make everything feel unstable.
For sure. So how do you do internal communication well during something like this?
Honesty, first and foremost. Don't sugarcoat, don't downplay. People appreciate honesty, even if it's hard to hear. And be consistent and timely with updates. Even if there's no news, tell them you're working on it. Keep them in the loop.
So being proactive again, keeping those lines open, making everyone feel part of the solution, not the problem.
Exactly. And this is where strong leadership is absolutely essential. In times of crisis, people look to their leaders for guidance, reassurance, direction. If leaders seem lost or out of touch, it just erodes trust even more.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about the long game now. Reputation recovery. Mohan talks about crafting a recovery vision. What is that really? Just fancy PR talk.
It's way more than that. It's about going beyond just fixing the damage. It's using the crisis to fundamentally change how you operate, how you think, the whole culture of your organization. Not a band-aid, but like transforming the wound into a source of strength.
Whoa, okay. So not just saying you've changed, but actually becoming a better company.
Exactly. Using the crisis as a push to look inward, ask tough questions, reevaluate your values, and on the other side, you come out more authentic, more ethical, and yeah, more trustworthy.
Sounds tough, but worth it if you can pull it off.
Yeah.
How do you actually go about crafting a recovery vision, though? Where do you start?
Well, one of the biggest things is getting your employees involved. They're the ones dealing with customers. They see the company's strengths and weaknesses up close.
Tapping into their knowledge, their experiences, making them part of the solution.
Exactly. Create a safe space where they can voice concerns, share ideas, and help shape the company's future.
That's interesting. So it's not just top-down, it's collaborative, like you're building it together. That probably helps rebuild trust internally too, right?
Absolutely. When employees feel heard, like their opinions matter, they're more invested in the company's success.
Right, right. Okay, so we've got this vision, this plan to be better. How do you actually put it into action? What are the, concrete steps?
Well, a big one is looking at your marketing. Are your messages still matching your values after all this? Are you communicating authentically, transparently? Are you connecting with people on an emotional level?
It's got to be more than just, spinning a good story, right? It's about real change.
For sure. Mohan gives this example of Starbucks. Remember that racial bias incident a few years back? They didn't just issue a statement and hope for the best. They closed all their stores for a day to do racial bias training for every employee.
Bold move.
Yeah.
That must cost them a ton. Was
Yeah.
really worth it.
Think about it from the customer's perspective. Actions speak louder than words, right? By doing something so drastic, Starbucks showed they were serious, that they were willing to back up their words with real action.
It's like showing, not just telling. Putting your values into practice, even if it's expensive or inconvenient.
Exactly. And that's where ethical leadership really comes in. It can't just be about PR, it has to be about changing how you operate. For real. Every decision, every action has to reflect that commitment to doing the right thing.
Consistency, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
100%. And being open about your journey. Don't be afraid to admit mistakes, share your struggles, show that you're human.
That's an interesting thought. Being vulnerable can actually be a strength in these situations. Makes you more relatable.
Totally. People are way more forgiving when they see you're genuinely trying.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got transparency, taking action, ethical leadership.
Hmm.
What about the people who are directly affected? The customers, employees, the community. How do you deal with them?
That's where it gets really tough. Empathy and compassion are key. A simple apology isn't enough. You have to show that you understand the pain you caused and are committed to making things right.
So listening to those who are hurt, acknowledging their experiences, and actually taking steps to fix things.
Yes, and patience is huge here. Rebuilding trust takes time.
It's a process, not a quick fix. And it sounds like it needs a lot of self-awareness, humility, and willingness to change.
It absolutely does. But the rewards are worth it. When you successfully rebuild trust after a scandal, you don't just fix the damage, you come out stronger, more resilient, and more driven by your values.
And that's a lesson we can all learn from, whether we're leading a company, a team, or just in our own lives.
Absolutely. We all make mistakes. The key is learning, growing, and using those mistakes to become better versions of ourselves.
Well, that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. The importance of transparency, the power of taking action, and the role of ethical leadership in rebuilding trust. Join us in part 2, where we'll dive into some real-world examples of companies who've navigated this successfully and pull out some takeaways you can use in your own life.
Welcome back to our deep dive into rebuilding trust. We just left off talking about how important transparency, action, and ethical leadership are.
And now I'm really interested to see how this all plays out in the real world with actual companies. Because let's be real, no two scandals are exactly the same.
You're right. Each one is kind of unique, its own messy situation. But by looking at some examples, some case studies, we can maybe pick out what works, what doesn't, learn from other people's successes and their mistakes. So where should we start?
Well, in the book, Mohan mentions Volkswagen, that whole emissions scandal thing. That was huge, right?
Right.
Really shook things up.
Definitely a big one. Hurt their reputation badly, and there were serious financial and legal consequences too, of course. But what's interesting is their recovery wasn't just about paying fines and apologizing. They knew they had to really change deep down to win back trust from customers and the public.
So more than damage control, it was like changing their values, how they did things,
Hmm.
a total overhaul.
Exactly. They had to get to the root of the problem, which was honestly a culture that cared more about profits than ethics. So they put a lot of resources into electric vehicles, made commitments to be better for the environment, and got way stricter about following the rules.
And that fits with what Mohan calls crafting a recovery vision.
Right.
Not just fixing the immediate issue, but using the crisis to become better.
Exactly. Volkswagen had to reinvent themselves, how the world saw them, prove they weren't that company that cheated anymore, and they had to show it, not just say it.
Actions, not just words. But how do you measure if a recovery like that worked? Is it all about sales and stock prices going back up?
Those matter, yeah. But in the end, it's about whether your stakeholders trust you again. Do customers, employees, investors, do they see you as ethical and trustworthy now?
That takes time, right? Not an overnight thing.
No way. It's a
Ah.
long process. Needs patience, consistency, and real commitment to change. Speaking of which, let's look at another case Mohan brings up. Johnson & Johnson, way back in the 80s, the Tylenol crisis. A classic example of good crisis management.
I kind of remember hearing about that, but vaguely. Refresh my memory. What happened?
So someone tampered with Tylenol, put cyanide in it, people died. It wasn't Johnson & Johnson's fault, but their brand was in serious danger. People were scared. Nobody knew if Tylenol was safe.
Wow, that's every company's worst nightmare. What did they do?
Acted fast, pulled all Tylenol off the shelves everywhere, even though it cost them a ton of money. And they launched a huge campaign telling people to return any Tylenol they had.
Putting safety over profits. That must have been a hard call.
It was, but the right one. And it saved them. Putting customers first, that showed integrity. And people trusted them again because of it.
It's interesting, though. They weren't to blame, but they still took full responsibility. They didn't try to, point fingers or downplay it.
Exactly. They understood that how things look matters just as much as the truth sometimes. Even though it wasn't their fault, they had to own it and be the ones to fix it.
So it's not just about legal responsibility, but moral responsibility, too.
You got it. That's a huge lesson for any leader. Sometimes you got to go above and beyond the law to do the right thing. Okay, ready for another case study. This one might be more relatable. Delta Airlines, 2016, that big winter storm mess.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Thousands of flights canceled, passengers stranded everywhere. Not a scandal exactly, but definitely a PR disaster.
It was. Mother Nature causing chaos, and it really showed how fragile air travel is. Not intentional wrongdoing, but a big operational failure that hurt Delta's reputation. And their first response, not great.
What happened? Did they try to pretend it wasn't a big deal?
Kinda. Communication was bad, they weren't ready for that many complaints, people stuck and angry. And social media, forget it. Photos of stranded passengers everywhere, angry tweets. It was a mess.
So how'd they fix it? Because Delta generally has a good reputation, I think.
They realized they had to change their approach. Started communicating way more, giving regular updates, offering compensation to people affected. And they used social media to talk to people directly, show they were listening.
So from reactive to proactive. From controlling the message to actually engaging.
You got it. Huge difference. Admitting mistakes, showing they cared, and taking steps to improve, that's how they won back trust. Okay, we've seen how companies handle things, but what about the leaders? I mean, they set the tone, make the big decisions, shape the whole company culture, right? You're right, leaders are essential to rebuilding trust. Think about it. If the leader seems shady or unethical, how can anyone believe the company's changed?
It's like a parent trying to teach their kid about honesty when they lie all the time. The kid's not going to buy it. So what does good ethical leadership look like in real life?
It's about walking the walk, not just talking. Making decisions based on integrity, even when it's hard or unpopular. Holding yourself and others accountable for doing the right thing.
So not just saying the right words, but actually doing the right thing consistently, even when no one's watching.
Exactly. And creating a culture where that's expected, where ethical behavior is rewarded and bad behavior isn't tolerated. Sending the message that doing the right thing isn't just good for business, it's the only way to do business.
And that's where Mohan's idea of building an ethical culture comes in, right? Making ethics part of the company's DNA, not just some PR stunt.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone, not just the leaders, understands the company values and how to use them when things get tough.
But what about when being ethical and making money clash? That happens all the time, right?
That's when strong leaders have to step up, have the guts to say, no, we won't do that, even if we lose money. Because your reputation, your integrity, they're worth more than a quick buck.
And hopefully, long term, doing the right thing does pay off because it builds trust with everyone: customers, employees, investors.
That's the goal, and plenty of companies have shown it's possible to do well and do good. Okay, so we've got ethical leadership, ethics training. But what if someone actually sees something wrong happening? How do you make it safe for them to speak up?
Yeah, good point.
You need clear ways for people to report concerns without fear, a confidential hotline, someone they can talk to, or just a culture where it's okay to go to your manager with a problem.
But it can't just be about having a way to report it, right? People have to believe that something will actually happen when they do.
100%. There has to be a system to investigate things fairly, openly, and consequences for those who break the rules. Otherwise, it's all just talk.
Putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Showing you're serious about this, not just saying it.
Right. And recognizing, even rewarding, those who do speak up. Because it takes guts to challenge things, especially when you might face backlash.
So you're making it clear that doing the right thing is expected, but also that it's valued, protected.
Yes, that's how you build a real ethical culture, one that can handle the tough times that come along.
Because, let's be honest, no company's perfect. No leader gets it right every time. Mistakes happen. But it's how you respond that matters. How you learn, how you use it to become better.
That's the core of Mohan's book. Not avoiding scandals, but navigating them the right way with integrity, empathy, and a focus on building something better.
It's about realizing that rebuilding trust is a journey, not a finish line. It's constantly improving, trying to be better, living up to your values.
And it's a journey we all take, alone and together, if we want a world where trust isn't some special thing, but the basis of everything. All our relationships, how we work together, everything.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more thing we need to talk about when it comes to rebuilding trust. And it might surprise you. Forgiveness. Back again for the final part of our deep dive into rebuilding trust. We've covered a lot. From dealing with those first moments of crisis, all the way to, well, the idea of forgiveness.
Yeah, and now we're getting to what I think is the heart of it all, ethics.
Okay.
It's like the ground that trust grows from. You can have all the best strategies, the perfect communication, but if there's no ethics underneath, it's all just going to collapse.
Makes sense. We've talked about how actions are what matter, so even if a company's saying all the right things, if they're doing shady stuff behind the scenes, nobody's going to believe them.
Exactly. Mohan calls it building an ethical culture. And it's not about just checking boxes or avoiding lawsuits. It's got to be deeper than that. It's about doing the right thing just the way you do business, naturally.
So more than just, like, a code of conduct that nobody reads. How does a company actually build that kind of culture?
Well, it starts at the top, right? With the leaders. Ethical leadership isn't just a fancy term. It's about leaders actually living those values in every choice they make, even when it's hard.
So think about a time you had to make a tough call. Did you do the easy thing or the right thing, even if it meant maybe bad stuff would happen? That's what leaders deal with, but on a bigger scale.
For sure. And it's not just the big dramatic choices. It's the everyday stuff that sets the tone. Do you cut corners to get things done faster? Do you look the other way when someone else is being unethical? Those little things add up. They become the company culture.
It's like that saying, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So if leaders let small ethical problems slide, everyone else gets the message that it's okay.
Right. And that's why Mohan's big on ethics training for everyone, not just the bosses. It's making sure every single person knows the company values and how to actually use them in real life.
But what about when doing what's ethical and doing what makes money are like pulling in opposite directions? Because that's real. That happens all the time.
That's when you need strong leaders, people who are willing to say, nope, not doing that, even if it costs us. Because in the end, your reputation, being a company people can trust, that's more valuable than any quick profit.
And hopefully over time, doing the right thing actually does become good for business because it builds that trust with everyone, right? Customers, employees, investors.
That's the dream. And there are plenty of companies out there proving it's possible. It's not just some fantasy. Okay, so we've got ethical leadership, ethics training. But what happens when someone actually sees something shady going on? How do you make it so they feel safe speaking up?
That's huge. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to say anything.
You need clear ways to report things, no fear of getting in trouble, a hotline, a specific person they can talk to, or just a general feeling that they can go to their boss and it'll be taken seriously.
But just having a way to report isn't enough, right? People need to believe that action will be taken, that it's not just going into a black hole.
Absolutely. There's got to be a system, investigations that are fair and transparent, and consequences for those who break the rules. If not, it's all just for show.
It's got to be real, not just talk.
You got it. And you got to recognize, even reward the people who do speak up. Because it takes guts to challenge things, especially when you might face backlash.
So you're making it clear that doing the right thing is what's expected, but you're also protecting and supporting the people who actually do it.
That's it. That's how you create a real ethical culture, one that can handle anything thrown at it.
Because, let's face it, no company's perfect. No leader makes perfect choices all the time. Mistakes happen. It's how you deal with those mistakes that defines you.
And that's what Mohan's book is really about. Not how to avoid screwing up, but how to handle it when you do, with integrity, empathy, and a focus on being better because of it.
It's about knowing that rebuilding trust is a journey, not a destination. You're always working on it, trying to improve, living up to your values.
And it's a journey we all have to take on our own and together if we want a world where trust isn't some rare thing, but the foundation of everything.
So, as you go from this deep dive back into your own life, think about this. How can you build trust or rebuild it if it's broken in your own interactions, in your own little corner of the world?
Because trust, it's powerful, it's fragile, easily messed up, but it's also what holds us together, makes relationships work, and helps us be our best selves.
That was your deep dive into rebuilding trust. We hope it gave you some new insights, made you think a bit, and maybe even left you feeling hopeful. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in the